Welcome in, everybody, back to another edition of View from the Nest, only here on Birds of the Gridiron's YouTube channel. Of course, guys, do us that favor. Go hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Go hit that like button over on Facebook. And, of course, you can check out Birds of the Gridiron every Monday night at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. In last week's video, we talked about the Eagles moving James Bradbury to safety. So that was the video from last week. Hope you guys all enjoyed that video. So in this week's video, with all the coaching talk with Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, all that stuff, I thought tonight would be a very interesting time to talk about Kellen Moore a little bit more. Yes, Kellen Moore a little bit more. Yes, I know what I said. But anyway, I hope to just dissect more into what Kellen Moore is going to mean for this Eagles offense. Of course, we know last year the Eagles offense was just absolutely terrible. It was stagnant. It was vanilla. It was plain as you know what. And Brian Johnson had no creativity in it. I mean, the most creative play I saw them run all year were screen passes that barely got beyond the line of scrimmage. And it was just an embarrassing thing. It was the downgrade from Brian Johnson after losing Shane Steichen, it just really wasn't great. But again, the Eagles were caught in a rough spot. They had just been in the Super Bowl. Most coaching hires and coaching staffs that were being figured out were already figured out. So they were kind of slim picking for offensive coordinator candidates after Shane Steichen departed to the Colts. So they gave it to Brian Johnson, who is still highly regarded in the NFL. He was highly regarded when the Eagles hired him as their quarterback coach in 2021. And they thought he'd be a future offensive coordinator in the NFL as well. Now, maybe he got that job a little too early in his career, but it is what it is. And now the Eagles have moved on here with Kellen Moore. But Kellen Moore has always been one of my, personally, even when he was with those dang Dallas Cowboys, was always one of my favorite offensive coordinator candidates. Always seemed to field a top-tier offense in Dallas. And, I mean, last year with the Chargers, it was a rough year for him with the Chargers. Now, there were some good there. There was some bad, but let's be real. That Chargers team last year wasn't healthy. Justin Herbert had, of course, the broken hand that he suffered through most of the season with. I can't remember the last time Keenan Allen had a healthy season. He has always battled a lot of hamstring issues in his career. Mike Williams tore his ACL, I believe, in week 2, and so they lost him for the season. And Austin Eckler missed, I think, 5 or 6 weeks early on in the season. So it was a rough go at it for Kellen Moore. But now Kellen Moore comes to Philadelphia, is ready to work with Nick Sirianni in this offense. And from what it's sounding like, this is Kellen Moore's show. This is not going to be last year with Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson and, who's calling the plays. This almost looks like this is the Kellen Moore show. And Eagle fans should get really excited about this because this is probably some of the best talent Kellen Moore's ever coached in his career. And he's coached a lot of good talent in Dallas and last year with the Chargers. You have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, a top 5 offensive line in football. So there's a lot of interesting key factors when it comes to Kellen Moore. Now, the biggest thing with Kellen Moore that I have really enjoyed seeing so far is A.J. Brown said this too. This is how you know Kellen Moore has already got the respect of his players, when his star players are already saying these things about him. And you knew you knew last year that this team just could not get under what Brian Johnson was doing because the offense last year was just catered to get the football to A.J. Brown and basically everyone else get out of the way. A.J. Brown had 5 of the greatest weeks in NFL history. He put up 5 straight weeks of 125 yards. Now, if you were the star wide receiver on a team and you did that, you wouldn't have any issues with the offensive coordinator, right? You're getting the football every game, 10 times a game. You're getting the football thrown to you. And A.J. Brown couldn't even stand it. There was such a huge disconnect between Brian Johnson and his 2 star wide receivers here, and it was really alarming. Especially for a guy who's been in the building for the past couple years with them. It wasn't like he was a rookie. He's been in the building. Now, yes, he was a rookie offensive coordinator, but he was the quarterback's coach here. And the fact that he was Jalen Hurts' quarterback coach and Jalen still regressed, now I'm not saying all that's on Brian Johnson, but it's just, it was alarming. But the first big key thing with Kellen Moore is that he gives wide receivers just so much freedom in his offense. A lot of motion, a lot of preset motion, not a lot of guys moving before the snap. It's just going to be a very big thing for Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, not just stuck in basically, as we call it, the missionary position when it comes to an NFL play being called. They use a lot of pre-snap motion in Kellen Moore's offense. So, I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Chargers were ranked 8th in pre-motion snap last year. The Eagles were ranked 32nd. The Eagles used the least amount of motion pre-snap in the NFL last year. The Chargers were 8th. And that's why the Chargers were still able to have some type of a capable offense with all those injuries, because they use a lot of free snap motion to free guys up, get them in mismatches, put them against lesser corners. Like, not every corner in the NFL travels. So if A.J. Brown's going up against a guy that only plays the left side of the field, you pre-motion him into the slot, you're going to put him up against a nickel corner, and it's just going to be the end of the show. Because A.J. Brown's a mismatch for most corners in the NFL as it is. But yeah, the Chargers were 8th in motion, so the Eagles were 32nd. I'm assuming the Eagles get more into that. I don't want to go unrealistic and say, oh, the Eagles are going to be a top 5 team in pre-snap motion. It's definitely going to be something that they'll be better at and they'll use more, especially with guys like Paris Campbell, who can move around the football field in motion. Anaya Smith can do it. Devontae Smith can do it. A.J. Brown can do it. So that's nothing to look at. That's something that's going to be very interesting to see, is that if the Eagles move up much in pre-snap motion. They were 32nd last year. I'm assuming they'll be anywhere in the top 15, which anything in the top 15 compared to last year is gold for this Eagle team. But this doesn't just go back to the Chargers. The Cowboys, they were about middle of the pack in 2023. Or 2022, the year before Kellen Moore came to the Chargers. They were about 16th in pre-snap motion, and then something happened during their bye week that year that they moved up to 7th. They were using it up until their bye week. They were using it 52% of the time, and then it jumped all the way to 60% of the time. So the Cowboys and Kellen Moore, what's that tell you about Kellen Moore? He's always willing to adjust. He's always willing to do something different that put the offense in the best position possible. Brian Johnson just thought he could throw the football to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and expect everything to be peaches and cream. Well, that wasn't the case. Especially when you couldn't. Another thing is, the Kellen Moore's offenses have also been extremely well with the blitz. So much more successful than Brian Johnson. The Eagles last year, Jalen Hurts had so many balls that he just had to hike up down the field because the blitz was coming and he had to get out of there. Or he just took bad sacks. Kellen Moore's offenses protect so much better against the blitz. I believe they're usually like anywhere between the top 12, which, I mean, compared to what the Eagles did last year, that's amazing. And that's what you do with pre-snap motion. You pre-snap motion. You get a guy running across the formation. You get a guy that can just do a quick burst route right over the middle of the field, and Hurts can dump it off to him. Or you could do that with Saquon. Yeah, you could do it with guys like Devontae Smith if you have him in motion, or Paris Campbell, or anybody. Maybe the Dallas Goedert screen can come back into fruition, because God knows they didn't use that at all last year. I think they used it like 3 times all season, it felt like. And in 2022, with Shane Steichen, it was such an effective play. It's like Brian Johnson didn't know how to call any of this stuff. And for the same people that are going to say, well, it's Nick Sirianni's offense. Okay, then why was Shane Steichen so successful calling it? Because you got to take some of your stuff and put it in with that. And it sounds like that's been the case so far, because Jalen Hurts came out and said that 95% of the stuff that he's been running in OTAs and in mandatory minicamp, 95% of he said is brand new to him. And he's learning a new offense, and he's excited to learn a new offense. Because the one thing that Kellen Moore came out and said in the middle of his, I think it was his first press conference since being hired, or it may have been like one of the ones during minicamp, you have to let Jalen Hurts be Jalen Hurts. Now, like I said, Jalen Hurts last year after the Rams game, he definitely hurt his knee. But you know what? He was still able to run somewhat. Definitely not 100% the way he was in 2022. But Kellen Moore said, you got to use his strengths. And they should use his strengths. Like, I'm sorry. They should be executing rollout passes with Jalen Hurts ad nauseum. Jalen Hurts is basically, if you would look at it, a run-first quarterback. If he's running rollouts with A.J. Brown, defense has got to pick. Do we go get A.J. or do we go get Jalen? And don't get me started about the run plays out of the shotgun next year with Saquon Barkley and him. You're not going to know. It doesn't matter who that football gets to go to. You're going to be afraid of whoever it goes to. And there's going to be so many plays where they're not going to know who to go after because of how dynamic both Saquon and Jalen Hurts are. But yeah, that was the one big takeaway with Kellen Moore is he said to Jalen Hurts about him, he's like, they just got to let Jalen Hurts be Jalen Hurts. Put the football in your best player's hands. If the Eagles get a healthy Jalen Hurts in 2024 under Kellen Moore, I fully expect Jalen Hurts to be not only just as good as he was in 2022, I'm expecting another jump. I don't know how big of a jump, but I'm expecting a jump. Because I said it on Birds of the Gridiron a few weeks ago, all Jalen Hurts really has to do compared to last year, stay healthy and just cut down the turnovers a tad. That's it. And the last little thing I want to say before I end this video, stop being concerned with Kellen Moore being a pass-first offensive coordinator. 98% of the league is heavy pass-first. We know that. It's an air raid NFL now. Running backs don't matter as much as they used to. But Kellen Moore was in Dallas with Zeke Elliott. And they ran the football a ton there. The reason they run the football a ton with Austin Eckler is because he was hurt half the season. Saquon Barkley will get his touches. He will get his rushing attempts. You don't have to worry about them not giving Saquon the ball. They did it with Zeke in Dallas. They fed him ad nauseum, even when it was barely working. So you don't have to be worried about them not running the football. They're going to run the football. They're going to do all the things they have to do possible to get this offense to be back to where it was in 2022. But in my opinion, Kellen Moore was a great hire for the Eagles. I think he's going to be a tremendous offensive coordinator here. I just hope they don't have to go through the conundrum of possibly losing him to a head coaching job after this year. But guys, I hope you all enjoyed this little video about Kellen Moore. It's his offense. He's running the show. Once again, hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Go hit that like button over on Facebook, both at Birds of the Gridiron. And again, Birds of the Gridiron is live every single Monday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, talking stuff just like this. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Have a good one.